The transport ship descended through the thick, swirling clouds of Zentrix Prime. Its engines hummed softly as it approached the bustling spaceport below. Inside, passengers shifted in their seats, eager to disembark after the long journey. Among them was Claire Bennett, a young woman from Earth. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her calm expression gave no hint of the nerves that might have gripped someone else stepping onto an alien world for the first time. Claire's eyes scanned the cabin, taking in the other travelers, humans and aliens alike, all heading to the same destination but likely for very different reasons. When the ship finally landed, Claire rose from her seat and adjusted the straps of her bag over her shoulder. She stepped into the narrow aisle, careful not to bump into anyone as she made her way toward the exit ramp. The airlock hissed open, and a wave of warm, humid air rushed in, carrying strange scents that were both intriguing and unsettling. Claire took a deep breath, letting the unfamiliar smells wash over her before stepping out onto the platform. Zentrix Prime was unlike anything she had ever seen. Towering spires made of shimmering metals stretched high into the sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of the planet's twin suns. Strange creatures moved about, some walking on 2 legs, others on 4 or more. Some glided through the air with wings or hovering devices attached to their bodies. The noise was overwhelming, a cacophony of clicks, growls, and melodic tones, spoken by beings whose mouths, beaks, or mandibles worked in ways Claire couldn't fully comprehend. Despite the chaos around her, she remained composed. Her gaze steady as she took in the scene. Claire had been chosen to participate in an interstellar exchange program designed to promote understanding between humans and other intelligent species. It was an honor, though not one she had sought out. Growing up on a harsh colony world known as a Deathworld, Claire had learned early on how to adapt to challenging environments. Life there wasn't easy. Resources were scarce, predators roamed freely, and every day brought new dangers. But it had also taught her resilience, patience, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. These skills would serve her well here, where everything seemed so foreign. As she stepped off the platform and into the main concourse of the spaceport, Claire noticed a group of aliens gathered near one of the kiosks. They were loud, their voices grating and guttural. One of them stood out, a hulking creature with spiked armor covering its massive frame. It had 3 sets of arms, each ending in clawed hands, and its head was crowned with jagged horns. Its beady eyes scanned the crowd, until they landed on Claire. A sneer spread across its face, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Another soft human," it growled, loud enough for those nearby to hear. The rest of the group chuckled, their laughter echoing ominously in the crowded terminal. Claire didn't react. Instead, she kept moving, weaving her way through the throngs of people and avoiding eye contact with the intimidating figure. She knew better than to engage with bullies, especially when outnumbered and unfamiliar with her surroundings. Still, the encounter left a mark. As she continued walking, she felt a flicker of unease, but also something else. A quiet determination began to stir within her, a reminder of all the times she had faced adversity and come out stronger. Her first stop was a small cafe located just outside the spaceport. The menu displayed holographic images of food items, many of which looked bizarre and unappetizing. Claire ordered something simple, a bowl of broth and a piece of flatbread, and found a seat near the window. From there, she could observe the comings and goings of the city while eating. She sipped her broth slowly, savoring the warmth it brought to her stomach. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, letting the tension of the earlier encounter fade away, but peace was short-lived. As she ate, she noticed a pair of glowing eyes watching her from across the room. It was the same creature from the spaceport, the one who had called her soft. He leaned against a pillar, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression mocking. Claire ignored him, focusing instead on her meal. When he pushed off the pillar and began making his way toward her, however, she tensed slightly, her hand tightening around the spoon. He stopped at her table, looming over her like a storm cloud. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Humans are weak. You'll never survive this place." Claire didn't look up. She continued eating, pretending he wasn't there. This only seemed to anger him further. "Are you deaf?" he demanded, slamming one of his fists down on the table. The impact rattled her bowl, spilling broth onto the surface. For a brief moment, the cafe fell silent. Everyone turned to watch the confrontation unfold. Claire set her spoon down carefully, dabbing at the spilled broth with a napkin. Then, without looking up, she spoke. Her voice was soft but firm. "Leave me alone." The creature laughed, a harsh, grating sound that grated on Claire's ears. "Or what?" he taunted, leaning closer. His breath smelled foul, like rotting meat. "What can a little human like you possibly do to me?" Claire didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small device, a translator module, programmed to help her communicate with non-human species. She placed it on the table between them and activated it. The device emitted a series of beeps and whistles, translating her words into a language the creature could understand. "I said, leave me alone," she repeated, this time in his own tongue. The effect was immediate. The creature recoiled, surprise flashing across his face. Clearly, he hadn't expected her to know how to speak his language. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Then, with a final snarl, he turned and stalked away, muttering curses under his breath. The cafe returned to its usual buzz of activity, and Claire went back to her meal as if nothing had happened. Later that evening, Claire checked into her assigned quarters, a modest apartment located in a residential district of the city. The building was old but clean, its walls adorned with murals depicting scenes of interstellar cooperation. Her room was small but functional, with a bed, a desk, and a window that overlooked a narrow alleyway. After unpacking her belongings, she settled onto the bed and stared up at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day in her mind. She thought about the creature who had confronted her, wondering why he had singled her out. Was it because she was human? Or was there something else driving his hostility? Claire had encountered prejudice before, both on her home world and during her travels. She understood that fear often led to aggression and ignorance bred contempt. But she also knew that not everyone shared these feelings. There were good people or beings out there, willing to look past differences and work together. With that thought in mind, Claire drifted off to sleep, her body exhausted from the journey but her mind still alert. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. And she was ready. Whatever Zentrix Prime threw at her, she would face it head-on, just as she always had. Because Claire Bennett was not someone who backed down, not when it mattered. Not when survival depended on it. The next morning, Claire woke up early. The suns of Zentrix Prime had not yet risen fully, casting a pale orange glow over the city. She sat on the edge of her bed for a few moments, letting her mind adjust to the new day. Outside her window, the sounds of the city were already beginning, humming vehicles, distant chatter, and the occasional screech of an alien bird-like creature soaring through the skies. It was strange but oddly comforting, like the hum of life itself. After washing her face and changing into fresh clothes, Claire grabbed her bag and headed out. Her first stop was the market district. She had been told it was one of the best places to learn about the planet's culture and pick up supplies she might need. The streets were narrow and crowded, lined with stalls selling everything from exotic fruits to intricate gadgets. Vendors called out loudly, trying to attract customers, while buyers haggled over prices in languages Claire couldn't always understand. She moved slowly, taking in the sights and smells, careful not to bump into anyone. As she wandered through the market, Claire noticed that some of the aliens gave her curious looks. Some seemed intrigued by her presence. Others appeared wary or even hostile, but none approached her until he showed up again. It was the same creature from the cafe, the one who had mocked her the previous day. He stood near a fruit stall, his spiked armor glinting under the sunlight. When he saw Claire, he smirked, revealing those jagged teeth once more. "You're still here?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I thought you'd have run back to your soft little home by now." Claire didn't respond. She kept walking, pretending he wasn't there. But he followed her, matching her pace as she moved through the crowd. "What's wrong?" he taunted. "Too scared to talk?" Or are humans really as dumb as everyone says? Still, Claire ignored him. She focused on navigating the market, weaving between shoppers and vendors, keeping her expression neutral. Inside, though, she felt a flicker of irritation. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her upset, but his constant presence was starting to wear on her nerves. Eventually, they reached a quieter part of the market, away from the bustling stalls and noisy crowds. Here, the creature stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His 3 sets of arms flexed menacingly, and his glowing eyes narrowed. "You can't just walk away from me every time," he growled. "I'm Krasnok. You should remember my name, because I'm going to make sure you regret coming here." Claire stopped, finally meeting his gaze. Her dark eyes were calm, betraying no hint of fear. "I don't care what your name is," she said evenly. "Leave me alone." Krasnok laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the nearby walls. "Oh, you've got spirit," he sneered. "Too bad it won't save you." He leaned closer, his breath hot and foul. "You think you're tough? You're nothing but a weak little human. You'll see." For a moment, Claire considered saying something else, something sharper, but she decided against it. Arguing with someone like Krasnok wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she stepped around him and continued down the street, leaving him standing there. Behind her, she could hear him laughing again, but she didn't look back. Over the next few days, Krasnok's harassment became a regular part of Claire's routine. Wherever she went, in the training grounds, the library, even the communal dining hall, he appeared, making snide comments or subtle threats. At first it seemed harmless enough, just annoying. But soon it escalated. During one visit to the dining hall, Claire was sitting at a table, eating quietly, when Krasnok approached her. He slammed his massive fists down beside her tray, causing the dishes to rattle. "You're not eating much," he mocked, leaning close. "Are you scared we'll eat you instead?" Claire didn't flinch. She kept chewing, her movements deliberate and unhurried. Her silence only seemed to infuriate Krasnok further. "Maybe I should teach you how things work around here," he snarled, grabbing her arm roughly. The room fell silent as everyone turned to watch, waiting to see if the small human girl would break under pressure. Instead, Claire tilted her head slightly, meeting his gaze with an unsettling calmness. "Let go," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that surprised even herself. Krasnok laughed, tightening his grip. "Or what?" he challenged. What happened next shocked everyone, including Krasnok. Without standing up, Claire shifted slightly in her seat. In one fluid motion, she twisted her body just enough to grab Krasnok's wrist with both hands. Before he could react, she used his own momentum against him, yanking downward with surprising strength. There was a sickening crack as his neck snapped sideways. Krasnok collapsed onto the floor, unconscious and unmoving. The entire room erupted into stunned silence. Claire released his wrist and calmly wiped her hands on a napkin before standing up. She glanced around at the wide-eyed spectators, then walked away as if nothing unusual had happened. News of the incident spread quickly across Centrix Prime within hours. Everyone seemed to know about the Deathworld girl who had taken down Krasnok without breaking a sweat. Some called her dangerous. Others whispered that she might be some kind of assassin. But Claire knew the truth. Her actions weren't malicious. Growing up on a harsh frontier colony where survival required quick thinking and adaptability, she had learned how to defend herself efficiently and decisively. It wasn't personal, it was survival. Despite the rumors swirling around her, Claire continued going about her daily routine. She attended lectures on xenobiology, practiced hand-to-hand combat techniques in the gym, and explored the city during her free time. Yet everywhere she went, she could feel eyes watching her, and not all of them belonged to friends. One evening, as Claire returned to her apartment, she found a note slipped under her door. It was written in a language she didn't recognize, but the translator device she carried quickly deciphered it. The message was short and cryptic: "Stay alert. Trouble is coming." Claire stared at the words for a long moment, her mind racing. Who had sent it? And what kind of trouble did they mean? She tucked the note into her bag and locked the door behind her. Sitting on her bed, she replayed the events of the past. Few days in her mind. Krosnok's bullying, the confrontation in the dining hall, the growing attention from strangers, it all felt connected somehow. Claire wasn't afraid, but she was cautious. She knew better than to let her guard down, especially in a place as unpredictable as Zentrix Prime. The following day, Claire decided to visit the training grounds again. She needed to stay sharp, both physically and mentally. As she entered the facility, she noticed several pairs of eyes following her movements. Some of the aliens nodded respectfully, while others whispered among themselves. Claire ignored them, focusing instead on warming up. She stretched her muscles, testing their flexibility and strength before moving on to practice routines she had learned back on her homeworld. While she trained, a wiry alien with iridescent skin and 6 glowing eyes approached her. His name was Renuk, and he introduced himself with a curious smile. "That move you pulled on Krosnok," he said, nodding appreciatively. "Impressive. Where'd you learn it?" Claire paused mid-strike, lowering her arms. She studied Renuk for a moment, trying to gauge whether he was friend or foe. Finally, she replied, "Survival school." Renuk grinned, revealing sharp, needle-like teeth. "Mind if I join you?" "I've always wanted to learn human fighting styles." At first, Claire was hesitant. She didn't trust easily, especially after everything that had happened. But there was something genuine about Renuk's curiosity, something that reminded her of the few allies she'd had back on her Deathworld. Slowly, she nodded. "Sure," she said, "but don't expect it to be easy." As they trained together, Claire began to open up, completely, but enough to share bits and pieces of her story. She told Renuk about growing up on a harsh colony, about the dangers she had faced and the skills she had developed to survive. In return, Renuk shared stories of his own experiences on Zentrix Prime, explaining the planet's complex social hierarchies and cultural norms. Their friendship grew gradually, built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of resilience. But even as Claire found an ally in Renuk, she couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was looming. The note she had received lingered in her mind, a reminder that Krosnok's defeat might not be the end of her problems. Somewhere out there, someone or something was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike, and Claire knew she had to be ready. The days that followed Krosnok's defeat passed in a blur for Claire. Life on Zentrix Prime continued as it always had, chaotic, unpredictable, and full of strange encounters. But now, there was a new layer to it all: whispers. Everywhere Claire went, she could feel the weight of eyes on her. Some looked at her with admiration, others with fear, and a few with outright hostility. The title Deathworld Girl had stuck, spreading like wildfire through the city. It wasn't just a nickname. It was a warning, a reminder that she was not someone to be underestimated. Despite the attention, Claire tried to keep her routine as normal as possible. She attended lectures, practiced combat techniques with Renuk, and explored the city during her free time. But no matter how hard she tried to blend in, she couldn't escape the shadow of what had happened. People talked about her behind her back, speculating about who she really was. Was she a trained assassin, a soldier from some distant war? Or just an ordinary human with extraordinary skills? The rumors grew wilder with each passing day, but Claire paid them little mind. She had learned long ago that people would always find ways to explain things they didn't understand, and she preferred to let them believe whatever made them feel safe. Renuk, however, was fascinated by her. He seemed to have endless questions about her past, her training, and the world she came from. During their training sessions, he often asked her to demonstrate specific moves or explain the principles behind her fighting style. Claire obliged, though she kept her answers brief and focused on practical details rather than personal stories. Still, over time, she found herself opening up more than she had expected. Renuk's curiosity felt genuine, and his willingness to learn reminded her of the importance of sharing knowledge, even when it felt uncomfortable. One afternoon, as they sparred in the training grounds, Renuk paused mid-session and tilted his head thoughtfully. His 6 glowing eyes blinked in unison, a gesture Claire had come to recognize as a sign of deep concentration. "You're different," he said finally. "Most humans I've met are softer, they rely on technology or allies to protect them, but you're self-reliant like us." Claire lowered her guard slightly, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's not about being tough," she replied. "It's about surviving. Where I come from, you don't get second chances. You either adapt or you die." Reinach nodded slowly, as if considering her words. "That makes sense," he said. "But still, most people wouldn't have taken down Krasnok the way you did. Not without anger or fear driving them. You were calm." "Calculated? Why?" Claire hesitated before answering. She rarely spoke about her motivations, even to herself, but something about Reinach's earnestness made her want to try. "Anger clouds your judgment," she said after a moment. "Fear makes you hesitate. Both can get you killed. I learned early on to push those feelings aside and focus on what needs to be done, that's all." Reinach grinned, revealing his sharp teeth. "You're full of surprises, Deathworld girl." Claire rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a small smile. For the first time since arriving on Zentrix Prime, she felt a flicker of camaraderie, a sense that she wasn't entirely alone here. Reinach might not fully understand her, but he respected her, and that was enough. Despite the growing bond between them, Claire remained cautious. She knew better than to let her guard down completely, especially with the note she had received still fresh in her mind. Asterisk, stay alert, trouble is coming. The words echoed in her thoughts whenever she found herself relaxing too much. Who had sent it, and what kind of trouble were they referring to? Her questions began to answer themselves one evening when she returned to her apartment. As she unlocked the door, she noticed faint scorch marks on the frame signs of forced entry. Her heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to stay calm. Slowly, she pushed the door open and stepped inside, scanning the room for any signs of movement. Everything appeared undisturbed, the bed neatly made, the desk untouched, but she knew better than to trust appearances. She moved quietly toward the desk and opened the top drawer, where she kept her translator device. It was still there, along with a folded piece of paper she didn't recognize. Unfolding it carefully, she saw another message written in the same unfamiliar language as before. Once again, the translator decoded it. Asterisk, Krasnok's family knows what you did. They won't forget. Asterisk, Claire's stomach tightened. She should have known this wasn't over. On a planet like Zentrix Prime, revenge was practically a cultural tradition. If Krasnok had relatives or worse, powerful allies, they wouldn't take kindly to his public humiliation. And if they were anything like him, they would be looking for blood. For the rest of the night, Claire stayed awake, keeping watch from the shadows of her apartment. She listened for every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind outside her window. Nothing happened, but the silence only heightened her unease. Sleep eluded her, replaced by restless thoughts of what might come next. The next morning, Claire decided to seek out Reinach. She trusted him enough to share the note, hoping he might have insight into Krasnok's family or their intentions. When she found him near the market district, he was examining a stall filled with glowing crystals. He looked up as she approached, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. Claire handed him the note without a word. Reinach read it silently, his iridescent skin darkening slightly, a sign of distress, she had learned. "This isn't good," he murmured. "Krasnok had a brother, Vornok. He's bigger, meaner, and he doesn't forgive easily." Claire crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "How big are we talking?" Reinach hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "Bigger than Krasnok, stronger too. If he's coming for you, you'll need help. I don't want to drag anyone else into this," Claire said firmly. "I can handle myself." Reinach shook his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You handled Krasnok because you caught him off guard. Vornok won't make the same mistake. Trust me, he'll come prepared." Claire sighed, knowing he was right. She couldn't face this alone, not if she wanted to survive. "What do you suggest?" "We gather allies," Reinach said simply. Not everyone on this planet is afraid of the Krasnok family. Some will stand with you if they see you're willing to fight back. The idea of relying on others made Claire uneasy, but she nodded reluctantly. All right, who do we start with? Reinach smiled, his sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. Leave that to me. Just be ready. Over the next few days, Reinach worked tirelessly to rally support for Claire. He introduced her to a diverse group of individuals, each with their own reasons for opposing the Krasnok family. There was Lyra, a slender alien with translucent skin and bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her emotions. Torka, a hulking brute whose size rivaled Vornok's but who harbored a surprising gentleness beneath his gruff exterior. And Zin, a wiry mechanic with 4 arms and a knack for building weapons. Together they formed an unlikely alliance, united by a shared desire to challenge the tyranny of bullies like Krasnok and his kin. As the group trained together, Claire began to feel a renewed sense of purpose. These weren't just allies, they were friends, people who believed in her and trusted her to lead them. For the first time since arriving on Zentrix Prime, she felt like she belonged somewhere, but the peace was short-lived. One evening, as the group gathered in a secluded corner of the training grounds, a loud crash echoed through the air. Everyone froze, turning toward the source of the noise. Emerging from the shadows was Vornok, flanked by a posse of equally menacing creatures. His massive frame loomed over them, his spiked armor gleaming ominously in the dim light. So, he rumbled, his voice deeper and more menacing than Krasnok's had been. You're the human who thinks she can humiliate my family and walk away unscathed. Claire stepped forward, her expression calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. I didn't ask for this, she said evenly. But if you want a fight, you'll get one. Vornok laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Brave words for such a tiny thing. Let's see if you can back them up. With that, he lunged forward, his massive fists swinging toward Claire. She dodged instinctively, using her speed and agility to evade his attacks. Behind her, Reinach and the others sprang into action, engaging Vornok's followers in a chaotic melee. The battle was intense, with shouts and clashes echoing through. The Night. Claire focused solely on Vornok, analyzing his movements and searching for weaknesses. He was strong, but his size made him slow, and his reliance on brute force left openings she could exploit. She darted around him, striking at vulnerable points beneath his armor until finally, with a well-placed kick, she sent him sprawling to the ground. Breathing heavily, Claire stood over him, her dark eyes meeting his. This ends now, she said firmly. Vornok growled but didn't rise. Defeated, he signaled for his followers to retreat, disappearing into the shadows with a final glare. When the dust settled, Claire turned to her allies, who were cheering and patting each other on the back. She managed a small smile, feeling a rare sense of triumph. For the first time, she realized that survival didn't always mean standing alone. Sometimes it meant finding strength in others and letting them find strength in you. The aftermath of the fight with Vornok spread through Zentrix Prime like wildfire. Word traveled fast in a city where gossip was practically a sport, and soon everyone knew what had happened. The Deathworld girl had stood her ground not just against Krasnok, but against his even more fearsome brother, Vornok. What's more, she hadn't done it alone. Her small group of allies Reinach, Lyra, Torka, and Zin had fought alongside her, proving that strength didn't always come from size or aggression. It came from unity. For Claire, the days that followed were a strange mix of relief and unease. On one hand, the immediate threat seemed to have passed. Vornok and his gang had retreated, nursing their wounds and licking their pride. They hadn't returned, at least not yet. But Claire knew better than to think it was over. The Krasnok family wasn't known for letting things go quietly. If anything, this was just the beginning of a larger storm. Still, life on Zentrix Prime began to settle into a new rhythm. People looked at Claire differently now, not just as someone who could take care of herself, but as someone who commanded respect. Some approached her cautiously, seeking advice or protection. Others kept their distance, wary of drawing attention to themselves by associating too closely with her. And then there were those who became outright admirers, eager to learn from her or simply bask in her growing reputation. Rhynek, Lyra, Torka, and Zin remained by her side, forming a tight-knit circle of trust. Together they trained regularly, honing their skills and preparing for whatever might come next. Each member brought something unique to the group: Rynak's knowledge of Zentrixian culture and combat techniques, Lyra's ability to sense emotions and anticipate danger, Torka's raw power and unwavering loyalty, and Zin's inventive gadgets that gave them an edge in any confrontation. Claire, meanwhile, served as the glue holding them together, her calm demeanor and sharp instincts guiding their actions. Despite the camaraderie, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was still lurking. She often found herself replaying the note she had received, the one warning her to stay alert. Who had sent it? Was it someone trying to help her or someone trying to manipulate her? The unanswered questions gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night. But she pushed forward, determined not to let fear dictate her life. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Claire and her friends gathered in a quiet corner of the market district. They sat around a low table, sharing a meal of roasted meats and alien fruits while discussing their next steps. The mood was light, laughter occasionally breaking through the hum of nearby conversations. "We should celebrate," Lyra said, her translucent skin glowing faintly with excitement. "You've earned it, Claire." Claire shook her head, picking at her food. "There's nothing to celebrate yet. Vornok isn't gone. Neither is his family." "True," Rhynek chimed in, his 6 eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "But we've proven something important. We can stand together. That's no small feat." Torka grunted in agreement, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "They'll think twice before coming after us again." Zin leaned forward, adjusting the goggles perched on his forehead. "Maybe so, but we can't afford to get complacent. If they regroup and they will, we need to be ready." Claire nodded, grateful for their support. These people had become more than just allies. They were her chosen family. For the first time since arriving on Zentrix Prime, she felt like she truly belonged somewhere. Still, the weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, not even for a moment. As if on cue, a commotion erupted nearby. Voices rose in anger, followed by the sound of scuffling. Claire instinctively stood, her hand reaching for the knife strapped to her belt. The others followed suit, their expressions tense as they scanned the area. Through the crowd, they spotted the source of the disturbance, a group of aliens cornering a smaller figure. The victim was clearly outnumbered, struggling to fend off blows while pleading for mercy. Without hesitation, Claire moved toward the scene, her friends close behind. When they reached the group, Claire stepped between the attackers and their target. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. The attackers turned to face her, their expressions shifting from surprise to hostility. One of them sneered, baring rows of jagged teeth. "Stay out of this, human. This doesn't concern you." "It does now," Claire replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. Behind her, Rhynek and the others formed a protective line, ready to back her up if needed. For a moment, tension hung thick in the air. Then, with a collective growl, the attackers backed off, disappearing into the crowd. Claire turned to the victim, who was trembling slightly but otherwise unharmed. It was a young alien, its skin shimmering faintly under the dim lights. "Are you okay?" Claire asked gently, crouching down to meet the creature's gaze. The alien nodded, its large eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," it whispered, its voice soft and melodic. I owe you my life." Claire shook her head. "No debt, just stay safe." As the alien scurried away, Claire straightened, her expression thoughtful. Moments like these reminded her why she had stayed on Zentrix Prime despite the challenges. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about making a difference for herself and for others. Over the next few weeks, Claire and her friends continued their efforts to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. They patrolled the streets, intervened in disputes, and offered guidance to newcomers struggling to adapt to life on Zentrix Prime. Word of their actions spread quickly, earning them both admiration and suspicion. Some saw them as heroes. Others viewed them as vigilantes meddling in matters that didn't concern them. Among the skeptics was a prominent figure in the city, an elder named Zenthus, whose influence extended far beyond the local markets. Zenthus was a tall, imposing alien with flowing robes and a staff adorned with glowing crystals. Known for his wisdom and diplomatic skills, he often acted as a mediator in conflicts involving different species. When he requested a meeting with Claire and her group, they agreed. Curious about what he wanted, the meeting took place in a secluded garden tucked away behind one of the city's oldest temples. Zenthus greeted them warmly, though his piercing gaze hinted at deeper concerns. "You've made quite a name for yourselves," he began, his voice calm but firm. "Some see you as protectors. Others see you as disruptors. Which are you?" Claire met his gaze without flinching. "We're just trying to survive," she said simply, "and to help others do the same." Zenthus studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. "Survival is a noble goal, but beware the cost. Power attracts enemies and yours grows with each act of defiance. Be careful whom you trust." His words lingered in Claire's mind long after the meeting ended. She couldn't deny the truth in them. Every step forward seemed to bring new risks, new challenges. But she also knew that standing still wasn't an option, not here. Not on Zentrix Prime. One night, as Claire lay awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, she heard a soft knock at the door. Slipping out of bed, she grabbed her knife and approached cautiously. Peering through the peephole, she saw Rennock standing outside, his iridescent skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She opened the door, stepping aside to let him in. "What is it?" she asked, noting the urgency in his expression. "I found something," Rennock said, holding up a small device. "It's a tracker. Someone planted it on you during the fight with Vornok." Claire's stomach tightened. "Who?" Rennock hesitated, his glowing eyes flickering. "I don't know yet. But whoever it is, they've been watching you, planning something." Claire took the tracker from him, examining it closely. It was sleek and nearly invisible, designed to blend seamlessly with its surroundings. Whoever had placed it on her was skilled and dangerous. "What do we do?" she asked finally. Rennock placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "We keep moving forward. Like you said, we survive, but we also prepare for whatever comes next." Claire nodded, determination hardening her features. Survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about fighting back, refusing to let fear control her. And as long as she had her friends by her side, she knew she could face anything Zentrix Prime threw at her. The tracker lay on the table between them, a silent reminder of the battles ahead, but Claire didn't feel afraid. Instead, she felt ready. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on with courage, with strength, and with the unwavering belief that she wasn't alone. The tracker sat on the table like a silent threat, its presence casting a shadow over Claire and Rennock's conversation. Claire stared at it, her mind racing with possibilities. Who had planted it? What did they want? And how long had they been watching her? The questions swirled endlessly, but one thing was clear: she couldn't ignore it. Ignoring it meant giving someone else control, and Claire wasn't about to let that happen. Rennock leaned forward, his 6 glowing eyes narrowing as he studied her expression. "We need to figure out who's behind this," he said firmly. "But we can't do it alone. We'll have to be smart about this." Claire nodded slowly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the tracker. "Agreed, but we also can't let our guard down. If they've been watching us, they'll know we're onto them now." Together they devised a plan. The first step was simple: use the tracker against whoever had planted it. Zin, with his knack for tinkering, would modify it to send false signals, leading their unknown enemy on a wild chase while they worked to uncover their identity. Meanwhile, Lyra's heightened senses would help them detect any unusual activity in the city, and Torka's imposing presence would serve as both a deterrent and a shield if things turned violent. As dawn broke over Zentrix Prime, the group gathered in their usual corner of the training grounds. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of alien flowers blooming in nearby gardens. Claire stood in the center, addressing her friends with quiet authority. "This isn't just about me anymore," she began. "It's about all of us. Whoever is behind this doesn't just see me as a target, they see us as a threat. We need to stay sharp and stick together." Her words resonated with the group. They knew the risks, but none of them hesitated. Over the past weeks they had formed a bond stronger than any alliance Claire had ever experienced. These weren't just allies. They were family. And family looked out for each other. The days that followed were tense but productive. Zin worked tirelessly on the tracker, embedding it with decoy signals designed to confuse anyone monitoring its movements. He attached it to a small drone, which he programmed to zigzag through the city's busiest districts, drawing attention away from their real location. Meanwhile, Lyra patrolled the streets, her translucent skin shimmering faintly as she tuned into the emotions of those around her. She reported back regularly, noting patterns of behavior that seemed suspicious or out of place. Torka took on the role of protector, accompanying Claire wherever she went. His massive frame was enough to deter most troublemakers, though he carried a heavy club just in case. Reinach, meanwhile, used his connections within the city to gather information. He spoke with traders, dockworkers, and even some of the less savory characters lurking in the shadows. Piecing together fragments of rumors and whispers, despite their efforts, progress was slow. Whoever was behind the tracker was careful, covering their tracks meticulously, but Claire refused to give up. Every setback only fueled her determination. She spent hours analyzing maps of the city, marking areas where strange activity had been reported. She reviewed security footage from public cameras, searching for anything unusual. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the city in shades of orange and purple, Claire finally caught a break. Lyra rushed into their makeshift headquarters, a rented warehouse near the outskirts of the city, with urgent news. "I found something," she said breathlessly. "A meeting. In the old industrial district. It's happening tonight." Claire exchanged a glance with Rinnek, who nodded grimly. "Let's move," she said, grabbing her bag and slipping the knife into its holster. The industrial district was a maze of abandoned factories and rusting machinery, its streets eerily quiet compared to the bustling heart of the city. Claire and her friends moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows as they approached the designated location. The building ahead was dark, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. But inside, faint lights flickered, casting distorted shapes on the ground. They split up, circling the perimeter to get a better view of what was happening inside. Through a crack in the wall, Claire spotted a group of figures gathered around a holographic map projected onto a table. One of them stood out, a tall, cloaked figure whose face was hidden beneath a hood. Their voice was low and commanding, issuing orders to the others. "They're planning something big," Renak whispered, crouching beside Claire. "Look at the map, it's a layout of the spaceport." Claire's stomach tightened. An attack on the spaceport could mean chaos for the entire city. Thousands of travelers passed through it daily, and an incident there would have devastating consequences. She clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "We can't let that happen." With a nod from Claire, the group sprang into action. Torka led the charge, bursting through the door with a roar that echoed through the empty factory. The figures inside scrambled, caught off guard by the sudden intrusion. Reinach darted forward, disarming one of them with swift precision, while Zin unleashed a barrage of smoke bombs, obscuring the room in thick gray clouds. In the confusion, Claire zeroed in on the cloaked figure, who was trying to slip away unnoticed. She lunged after them, tackling them to the ground before they could escape. The hood fell back, revealing a face she recognized immediately. It was Xenthus, the elder who had warned her during their earlier meeting. For a moment, Claire froze, stunned by the revelation. Xenthus met her gaze, his expression calm despite the situation. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "This is bigger than you realize." "Explain," Claire demanded, her voice low and dangerous. Xanthus sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. The Krasnok family has ties to powerful factions beyond this planet. They've been manipulating trade routes, smuggling weapons, and destabilizing regions for years. I needed proof to expose them, but I couldn't act alone. When you arrived, I saw an opportunity. So you used me? Claire asked, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. I didn't intend for it to go this far, Xanthus admitted. But yes, I hoped your actions would draw their attention and force them to reveal their plans. Claire stared at him, her mind racing. Betrayal burned in her chest, but she forced herself to think clearly. Whether or not Xanthus had intended to manipulate her, the truth was undeniable. The Krasnok family posed a significant threat, not just to her, but to everyone on Xentrix Prime. What happens now? She asked finally. Xanthus hesitated, then reached into his robes and pulled out a data chip. This contains evidence of their operations. Take it. Use it however you see fit. But know this, the road ahead won't be easy. Claire took the chip, her grip firm. It never is. Back at their headquarters, the group regrouped, discussing their next steps. The evidence Xanthus had provided was damning, but using it effectively would require careful planning. They decided to share it with key figures in the city, trusted leaders and mediators, who could rally support against the Krasnok family. It wouldn't be a quick fix, but it was a start. As the days turned into weeks, Claire and her friends continued their work. Slowly but surely, they began to dismantle the web of corruption and fear that the Krasnok family had woven. Allies emerged from unexpected places, joining their cause and amplifying their efforts. The Deathworld girl, once seen as an outsider, became a symbol of hope and resilience. Through it all, Claire remained grounded. She knew the fight wasn't over, not completely. There would always be challenges, always be new threats lurking in the shadows, but she also knew she wasn't alone. With her friends by her side, she had built something stronger than fear or intimidation. She had built trust. And that, more than anything, gave her the strength to keep moving forward. One evening, as she stood on a hill overlooking the city, Claire felt a rare sense of peace. The lights of Xentrix Prime twinkled below, a tapestry of life and possibility. Behind her, Renek joined her, offering a rare smile. You've changed things here, he said. Claire shrugged, gazing out at the horizon. I didn't come here to change anything, she replied, just to survive. But deep down, she knew she had done far more than that. On Xentrix Prime, she had carved out a place for herself, not through violence, but through resilience, intelligence, and an uncheckable will to endure. And in doing so, she had found something even more valuable: a home.